Hi everybody, Miss Henley here. It's been a while. If you're watching in real time, I apologize. Going back to school, it's been really busy. But I want to jump back into Pax. It was just getting so good, so I apologize. And if you're not reading in real time, well, there hasn't been a break for you. So we are in chapter 17. Let's see. All right. Pack watched Gray lap at the river's edge, then stumble back. For 2 days now, the foxes had rested across from the war-sick camp, but Gray had not gotten better. When the old fox reached the spicy shade of the hemlock bough, he collapsed. His eyes were hollow and glazed, and he barely flinched when Pax cleaned his neck once more. Remember that Gray was not doing so well, really weak, and it looks like he's getting even worse. Pax found the wound even more inflamed. Stay hidden and rest. Because remember, he got into that fight with that other fox. He left Gray and climbed upstream to a place he discovered where the river narrowed beside a gorge wall, and the underneath beside it was dense enough that he could move about unseen by the humans. He had little luck hunting. The area was teeming with mice and rabbits, but they scampered from Pax's clumsy attempts to catch them. Remember, he's not used to hunting on his own, right? He was a pet. Besides beetles and unripe berries, he'd been able to swipe only a few crayfish, which Gray had refused. For half an hour, Pax tried. He chased scurrying voles and hopping wrens, and once a sunning frog. But each time he sprang, his jaws snapped around only air. He grew hungrier with each failure. He wanted meat, for himself and for his weakened companion. The rich smells from the camp tormented him. He leaped into the water. The current was swift there, but midway across, 3 boulders rested against one another to form a secure perch. From there, Pax had a clear view downstream to the humans. More had come. A few were women, most were men. Pax checked for his boy constantly because the father was still here, and because he sensed that his home was not far away, but only full-grown humans appeared. Many of them were in the field now. Some were down near the riverbank, unrolling wires directly across from Gray, which made Pax uneasy. But the soldiers did not seem interested in anything except their labor. Pax had learned their routine. Each morning, 2 of them entered the tent as that his senses told him was full of food. Then these 2 would cook at the fire, and the other war-sick would gather to eat. Afterward, they all toiled in the field, in the vehicles, unloading more and more machinery, but no one went near the grub tent until dusk, when the same 2 would cook the evening food, and then call the others to gather. It was mid-afternoon. Pax watched for a while longer to be certain the war-sick were occupied, then crossed over the remaining span of rushing water along a fallen tree. Belly to the ground, he made his way across the ridge to a spot above the old mill. There he paused to survey the scene. 3 men were positioned at the encampment just below him. They huddled over new equipment on the south edge of the mill, where 2 thick walls met. The rest of the humans were in the field. Some rolled spools of wire to the holes they dug near the riverbank. Others lowered boxes into those holes, then shoveled dirt over them. 2 pairs had crossed the river. They were digging holes on the far bank, some directly below the hemlock where Gray was resting. Pax knew that the humans would not scent Gray, and that Gray would not venture out while they were near. Still, he bristled in anxiety. He would move the wounded fox to a safer place tonight. So the soldiers are getting close to where Gray is. So Pax is worried and has made the decision that later in the night he's going to move him because he's so weak he can't move on his own. Pax darted to the north edge of the mill ruins, near the tents and the vehicles. There, a birch tree angled out from the stone wall. Pax stopped short. So you're probably asking yourself, what is he doing? What do you think he's doing? That's right. He's going to try to get the food from the tent, the mess, they call it the mess tent. That's where the cook is, and they cooked for the soldiers. He had been here before. This place, the tree with its peeling white bark, the walls, the field below, scented with wild onions and timothy grass and the faintest odor of tar. He recognized them all. He had been here with his boy long ago as a kit. Remember, Kit is a baby fox. So he's been there with Peter before. The scene returned. Sticks. Peter and the 3 other boys had rushed each other from the stone walls, whooping and brandishing sticks. They had been laughing, but those swinging sticks had made Pax uneasy. He shadowed Peter, yipping at the other boys when they came too near, until Peter had tied him to this very tree. Pax had whined and chewed at the rope the rest of the afternoon. Peter had been here. Pax sniffed the tree and the base of the wall thoroughly, but he could not find no trace of his boy now. The war-sick men, though, their scent was everywhere, strong and dangerous. Pax's gut tightened. So as a reader, you often know if he was there with Peter when he was younger, then Pax is correct. He's pretty close to where Peter lives, which is, we know he's trying to get there. We also know Peter's trying to get there, right? And we also know that Peter has a broken leg and he's with Vola. He checked the tents until he was certain there was no movement around them. Then he made a dash for the grub tent. Grub is another name for food. At the corner he paused, checked again, and then slipped under a flap. Inside, meat hung above tables, heaped with onions and potatoes. A bonanza for his taking. Pax sprang and seized a joint of ham, tearing it from its hook, and darted out of the tent with the heavy prize in his mouth. He ran uphill, behind the walls and back through the shrubby wood. At the river, he dropped the ham and gulped down a meal of the salty meat. He tore the joint apart and buried 2 large hunks in the sandy soil at the river's edge, and then marked the caches. He picked up the remaining piece, lush with meat and fat that would nourish Gray for days, and carried it over the fallen trunk. He paused on the pile of boulders to survey the camp again. The humans had disappeared. A new odor, faint but menacing, hung in the air. Pax recognized it. When he was a yearling, the father had brought a fan to his boy's room. Pax had hated the dark electrical scent coming off the wire between the fan and the wall. One night, when the odor was especially dangerous, Pax had chewed through the wire as if killing a snake. Pax's every instinct urged him to run from the menacing scent, but he would not leave without Gray. And just then he saw the old fox stagger out from beneath the hemlock bough, making his way back to the river. Gray tripped. Instantly, the scorched air smell sizzled up from the spot like an earth-born bolt of lightning, and at the same second, the riverbank exploded. Soil and rock and river and turf blew up in a furious roar, then fell back to the cratered earth like harsh black rain. Pax dropped the ham and barked for Gray. His ears rang in a shuddering silence. The war sick poured out from behind the walls. From their cries, Pax knew they were excited. They ran down the field, splashed across the river, and spread out over the smoking bank. After several moments of searching, they made their way back to the camp. When the last of the war sick had returned, Pax tore down the gorge. The great hemlock bough lay across Gray's chest, cleaved from the tree. Pax nosed his friend's muddy cheek, pawed his flank. He sniffed Gray's muzzle. There was breath there, but just barely. So what happened was, in war, a lot of times soldiers will bury explosives on the ground. They're called landmines, and that's what happened. It went off right where Gray was standing. So it says that he's breathing but barely. This poor fox. Pax lay down shoulder to shoulder with the old fox, pressing tight in full company. He could offer only witness, but nothing else was asked. Linked with Gray's final memories, he heard the song of an Arctic bird instead of the human shouts. Instead of the ashy haze that hung over them, he saw with Gray a vast blue bowl of sky. Instead of lying on gritted ground, he tumbled with Gray and his brother Kits across a snowy tundra spiked with starry blue flowers. He purred with Gray under his silver mother's rough tongue, tasted her warm milk, and felt the weight of her chin resting over his newborn skull. And then peace. The old fox was still. Pax rose. He pressed his forehead into his friend's cheek. He reared back and bayed, heedless of whether the war-sick heard, and then he ran. So Gray died. So sad. There was no joy in running this time, but there was relief that his body served him. He ran and he ran, north through the dusk, north through the night. As dawn crested, he entered the challenger's territory, and still he ran. The yellow fox charged out to face him, but he fell back from the determination of Pax's course and let him pass. Pax galloped down the cliff, tore across the valley bottom, and strained up the final long rise to the meadow. Midway, he stopped and lifted his head. Know where he's going? Yep, Bristle. He's going back, right where they were. 3 foxes watched him approach. They were familiar to him now. Gray's mate, still big-bellied with kits, runts half her size nearby. Bristle did not stand with him. Her bright fur shone at the base of the large pine that towered over the meadow, the pine under which her sister had died. The scent of Gray's death was on Pax's fur, but the foxes knew already. The scent of Gray's... I read that already, I'm sorry. Pax paddled up the rest of the way. When he reached Gray's den, he lifted his head and wailed the notes of grief. 3 foxes answered in kind. Gray's mate approached. She sniffed Pax's nose and then his flask. She learned of the fight, which did not kill her mate, and of the human's explosion, which did. She learned also that Pax had protected Gray, had fed him, had cleaned his wounds, for which she was grateful. And then she learned the news that Gray had died trying to obtain. It is not safe for us in the South. It is not safe. Gray's mate walked away, her belly swaying. Her message delivered. Pax dropped to the grass, exhausted. Runt came to claim the space beside him, and Pax was glad to allow the little fox to groom him. Bristle watched from the base of the pines above. Pax slept fitfully through the afternoon, plagued by dreams in which the boy was tangled in smoking wires. Finally, as the moon rose in an indigo sky, he got to his feet. He breathed the scents of the foxes, linked in grief over the loss of their silver center. He was linked to them by the same grief, and he knew he would be welcomed in this valley if he chose to stay. But his dreams urged him back to the war-sick camp. As he was about to leave, he sensed Bristle tearing down the hill. He waited. "Where are you going?" Pax shared his new understanding that the exploding earth was war, and that the wires caused death. He shared his fear that his boy might come upon them if he joined his father in his determination to protect Peter. These explosions, they would kill humans? Yes. She sprang around to face him. Then leave them. Pax ignored her. He gathered himself and leaped. He hit the ground at a run. And that is the end of chapter 17. So Gray loses his life because of these explosions. And now Pax is really determined to find Peter, but also he wants to do something about these explosions, these mines that are in the ground, because he's afraid that if Peter comes this way, he's going to be killed. And when he asks Bristle if these explosions will kill people, she says yes, and so he's taking off, and she says, so leave them. Because we know that Bristle is not a fan of humans, because they killed her parents. So now we have this added level of the story where we know Peter is going to eventually be coming that way, and those mines are in the ground. You can't see them. So we're gonna see how Pax is going to try to protect Peter. All right, I'll see you for chapter 18.